Hello, everybody. I'm Robert Franz, music director of your Windsor Symphony Orchestra, and I'm thrilled today to have two guests, Lillian Scheirich, the concertmaster of the Windsor Symphony Orchestra, and Bénédicte Lauzière, concertmaster of the Kitchener-Waterloo Symphony. Two concertmasters in one interview. How exciting is
Ah,
that? Hello, you two.
hello.
Thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me. I'm really excited that the two of you will be playing what's called in the business the Bach double, but it's the concerto for two violins and orchestra by Johann Sebastian Bach. And it is probably the most famous double concerto out there, especially for two violins. And it's one that is beloved by so many because it's so beautiful. And we'll get into it in a minute for sure. But I want to find out a little bit about you both. Benedict, how did you become the concertmaster? When and how did you become concertmaster at Kitchener-Waterloo?
So it's actually a funny story. I was still in school. I was doing my master's degree at Juilliard, and I had met Steve Satarski, who used to be concertmaster in KW at NYO. So we spent the summer working. I was studying under him, and he invited me to come play in the Baroque series in Kitchener in the first concerto by Mendelssohn. You always hear the second, but not always the first. Anyway, I was soloist in that, and then they posted the concertmaster opening, and I was like, oh, I've just been there. It's a really nice group of people. Why don't I just try my luck? Like, I was still in school, and I didn't expect this to happen. But, a year later, I found out that they picked me, and I was super happy, and the timing worked out with me graduating and then just going on to being the concertmaster. So that was exciting times. I was 24. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Lillian and I actually did that first Mendelssohn concerto together just a couple of years ago, didn't we, Lillian?
We did. It's fun. It's a beautiful piece. You're right. No one plays it. It's
I
fun.
love
right.
it.
It's
Yeah.
too bad. It really is interesting and should be more played. But yeah.
Well, we are all doing our best in South Ontario to make that happen. That's our job, right? So, Lillian, what if you were to say to somebody, if somebody said, well, what does a concertmaster actually do? What are some of your main responsibilities as concertmaster of an orchestra?
I think I thought about this a lot, and my answers, they kind of evolve each time. And I think the best word I can say is I'm like the liaison officer. I'm the person in between you and the string section, and I have to try and lead the string section as best I can to follow what you would like to do with the piece. So, and then if there's a problem with the violins or something that's not working well, to try and figure out something that would help the section play better together or help the string section play better together so that we can communicate with what you want us to do. So I think it's just being that person who helps get your message across as best I can. I don't know what you think.
Well, yeah, no, it's interesting you say that because I often think that rather than being a traffic cop as a conductor, that my job really is to help kind of move energy around and kind of connect people without sound, right? And so I think it's really interesting that you make this comparison or bring this up of this idea of the concertmaster helping to sort of keep things moving. Bénédicte, how has your experience been with that sort of aspect of being a concertmaster, and what for you is the most important aspect of being a concertmaster?
Well, I think Lillian brought a lot of good points that I absolutely agree with. There's also the fun duty of doing bowings, right?
Yes. So for our audience who may not be string players, or for wind players who don't really want to hear the description of bowings, can you tell us all about bowings?
So the bow is what we use to produce the sound on the violin. I wish I had my violin and bow here so I could show you. But basically, if you go from what we call the frog of the bow, put on the string and go all the way to the tip, it's a down bow. And if you do the opposite, that's an up bow. And that's it. You really only got two options.
It's funny, even though there are only two options, there are so many possibilities of discussions about bowings.
Yeah.
That's why I said that. I knew someone was going to bring it up. I was like, yeah, it's super easy, right?
How do you navigate through conversations with your other string colleagues in KW in terms of creating bowings? How does that work there for you?
So sometimes goes well, sometimes not so well. But we always try to work together, and hopefully they take my input, I take their input, and that's kind of how it works. We find a happy medium.
Well, and it is interesting because the length of the bows are different for each instrument, and so not every instrument can use the same exact bowing because of the sort of shape and size of the bow in the instrument, right? So you have to sort of make accommodations for certain
Especially
factors.
cello and bass, I
Mm.
find. Yeah.
Interesting, yeah. So as concertmaster, Lillian, let me start with you. What is one of the most memorable experiences over your years as being a concertmaster of the Windsor Symphony? And I'm going to ask the opposite of that too. And then what was one of the most terrifying experiences you've had as concertmaster of the WSO?
Okay. Oh,
One that
well,
you can share, Lillian.
let's go with one of the, well, I have to say there's many moments probably in each concert that you want to remember, because there's magic in each concert when you're doing your job and your colleagues are with you and you're working together. And it's really hard to pull a favorite out of all of that, because you come away from a concert and there's something that strikes you. And I think if that's why we're in this, we love doing this, we love performing, we love playing this music. And I think probably I want to say the chamber music stuff makes me the happiest, but like when we played the Metamorphosen by Strauss, that was beautiful. And it's so moving and so sentimental. And it's just when you're in the middle of that sound, it just engulfs you, and you're part of something amazing. But when we do the Brahms symphonies, or we do the Mozart symphonies, and you're working with the winds and the brass, and you're in the middle of that sound, I can't say that that's not as wonderful. So I don't know. I think I love things too much. There's not one thing that pops out. I'm sorry, I don't have one.
Well, and I will just say, in terms of Metamorphosen, what's interesting about that piece by Richard Strauss is that it's for 23 solo string players, which is unusual because strings usually share a stand and usually share a part among the five sections of strings. But in this case, there are 23 independent string parts, which really makes it a very different experience to play. What about you, Bénédicte? What if maybe a highlight or something that's terrified you? I know I think people are interested, as am I always, in like what really scares you? Because we look at the concertmaster on stage and you look so poised and so polished and so comfortable, but you're human, so something must terrify you from time to time.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's the one experience that was the most, like, that stuck with me the most, and that was the most terrifying for me as well, was in my first season with the orchestra. Uh, we programmed Scheherazade, and it's a piece that you kind of grow up with, practicing the solos, and it's really like a romantic piece that I've always loved so much. So I really didn't want to mess it up. And so I enjoyed it so much, but at the same time, I was always like, oh my God, I gotta get this right. And I think we did it, but it was intense experience. So yeah.
One of the roles that a concertmaster plays that are very important is at auditions, because really it's usually the music director and the concertmaster who are in talks, even with a committee, about what kind of sound they want, what kind of player they want in their sections. Maybe, Bénédicte, I'll start with you. What sort of things do you look for when you're listening to a string player audition for a blind audition for the Kitchener-Waterloo Symphony?
For me, for auditions, it always comes down to music, and does the person have something to say musically? I don't really look for certain specific characteristics in their playing, because I think at that level, players are moldable and they can adapt to the kind of sound that we're going for. So for me, it always comes down to, yeah, the music they're making. Are they telling a story when they're playing? Do they seem comfortable as you can be in an audition setting, because that's a really stressful situation. But yeah.
So, Lillian, I have the same question for you, and I'm just going to tell one little tale out of school. One of the things that I love about you the most is you are extremely detail oriented, and having sat in many auditions with you, you take copious notes. And one of the things I love most about that is that you're constantly adjusting your glasses so that you can read the notes and see above and beyond. And that image is burned in my brain, but it's
Sorry.
accompanied with this. No, no, no. It's accompanied with the most interesting and deep respect um, for your for your understanding, for your opinion, and for your desire to find what's best in the musicians that are auditioning. Can you take us into your world a little bit? What is it that you're looking for when you're auditioning some string players?
Okay. Well, I guess I should address the notes that I take because I'm worried that I'm going to mix people up. Because when we have a lot of people, I want to make sure I can remember what they did in each piece. So I mark down, the good and the bad. And I know no one's ever going to do a perfect audition. I wish I could do a perfect audition, but hopefully the good outweighs the bad. That's what you're looking for, even if you make some mistakes. So the notes are to remind me of what I heard, but I am, you do ask them for, to change things sometimes. And I think that's, that's a really important thing. If a person can change the way they're playing, if you ask them to do it not just louder or softer, but um, a little faster, if they can discern the what speed they played at and what speed you'd like it, and then make the adjustment. If you say more off the string or more accented, if you just give a subtle change and they can adapt, that's important because we're always adapting as we're playing, as we're rehearsing, as we're playing our concerts. Um, that part I think is really important. I think that when we're looking for, as Bénédicte said, it's really important they have a great sense of their musicality and can express themselves, but can they express themselves within the restrictions of the rhythm that you expect from us in the orchestra, so that they're not taking time everywhere and where they feel they should, but that they can express themselves within the limitations of what we do. But she's absolutely right. If they don't have anything to say by themselves for the audition, how can they add to the ensemble or the color that we create as a section? So I think we're on the same page there.
I think it's really interesting point because I often am asked by people like, okay, so you know they'll hear maybe an untrained ear will hear a player and this player's playing in tune and all the right notes and all the right time, and or I'll have a student play for me that sounds like that, and I'll say to them, it's terrific, but now we're at the beginning. And so what you do once you get that ground level is then you develop this ability to be flexible. You have to be a chameleon to be in the orchestra, and especially in orchestras or orchestras like the Windsor Symphony and Kitchener Waterloo Symphony that play music from 300 or 400 years worth of repertoire. You have to be able to jump from one to the other and to do it with the proper sound and the proper style and a flexibility. And we, as you do in Kitchener Waterloo, we perform a lot of Baroque music, but that's not an appropriate sound when you're playing a Brahms symphony or Scheherazade. You can't play in the same way. So I'm going to ask this question in reverse because I'm really excited to make music with the two of you in this Bach double. Benedict, I've listened to as many recordings as I can find of your playing, and I've been a fan of yours for many years. I've actually internet stalked you for a number of years, and it was actually our acting principal second, Michel Dumoulin, who said to me, "You've got to listen to this Bénédicte Lauzière." And so I did immediately, and I said, "Someday we're going to have her come to Windsor." I knew it, and this was the perfect opportunity. But one of the things that struck me was your ability to play the solo Bach that you have online, which is I think just beautiful. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like to be in the position of going from Scheherazade, which is hyper romantic, big sound, play over a full orchestra, to the intimate, stylistic qualities of playing a Bach concerto?
Sure. Well, first of all, I think vibrato is something we have to address.
Yeah.
There's definitely different stylistic ways to approach Baroque music nowadays because everybody has kind of their own view of what is right for the music. Um, but I think what I go for is a more purity and kind of phrasing with more the right hand, so more with the bow, and also a kind of breathing in the music. So if the music breathes, then there's space to kind of dance more with it, which a lot of Baroque music is based on dances of the time. And so breathing, dancing, relaxing the left hand a little bit. And yeah, I think that's how I approach it.
Well, and I love this technical side of, I mean, I think for a non-violinist and a non-string player, the idea that the left hand and the right hand have such different functions in terms of how you make sound. And I often describe it like in romantic music, the left hand has such a prominent role in the production of the sound, but in Baroque music, the right hand really dominates how the sound is produced with the speed and the use of the bow. Lillian, how do you deal with this chameleon kind of aspect of your music making? I mean, at the Windsor Symphony, we literally will spend 1 week doing Baroque music, the next week doing pops music, the following week doing a big, large symphony, and then kind of repeat that back again for 33 weeks straight.
Huh. Well, I don't know that it's I don't know that it's a really that big of a process in my head. I just, when I play the Bach, I know that that's the sound. I already have the sound in my head that I want to get. So I don't have to shift gears. I just, whenever you play Bach, I mean, everything that Bénédicte said, it's true. You change the vibrato, you change the pressure, you change the use of the bow, you change the bow speed, you change how you interact with the notes. And it just, it's like when someone puts Stravinsky in front of you and puts Mozart, or sometimes that works together, sometimes it doesn't. But Rachmaninoff versus Mozart, maybe that's a better comparison. You just switch, and you're so involved with telling the story of that piece and playing that kind of repertoire. You're not thinking, oh, I have to change this and change that. It's like changing a book. You're reading Alice in Wonderland, and then you read Kennedy's biography. So you just switch. You don't have to think about the other one.
Right.
Just change gears, right? So I think that makes it fun, because you automatically switch the dial, you're on to the next thing, and it makes it fun for the audience because they don't see the change. They just go, wow, that's different, right? So,
well, and what's really interesting about this digital concert series is that we will rehearse and record Baroque music pretty much in a click, and then we'll do the same thing with the romantic music. So unlike a regular concert where we would go back and forth in a concert, we actually won't be doing that in the production of this series, which I think is going to be kind of an interesting difference. Bénédicte, which violinist, old or current, inspires you the most with their Bach playing?
Wow, that's a really, you're really throwing a question.
I know, that's my job. So I have a lot of jobs, and in this case,
yeah. Well, growing up, I had the recording of James Ennis, and he was really the standard for me, like during my studying years, more like back in Montreal, the Conservatoire, and yeah, I would say for that time was James Ennis, and then I explored a little bit more and listened to Rachel Podger. Is that how you say her name? Yeah, and that's very interesting. And then you listen to all these like older players like Heifetz and Isaac Stern, and it's like a whole different world. So I can't pick one, but here I named you a few that were part of my education, if you will.
Lillian, what about you? Do you have a favorite violinist, a sound that is in your ear, someone that you either grew up with or someone whose Bach, when you hear, you think, wow, that is magic?
Well, like Bénédicte said, a couple of the people she mentioned, James Ennis, of course, beautiful Bach, and Rachel Barton Pine, another way to do Bach. I also loved, I was a real awakening to hear Jean Lemon do Bach with Tafelmusik, and it really opened my eyes to the way she used her bow. And since she guested down here a bunch of times, it was interesting to talk to her and see how she works on music. And she was a real inspiration because she really opened it up and explained it. So I wasn't just listening to it and without understanding what was going on. I liked listening to that. I liked listening to, and I can't remember his name, but I sent you that recording. What was it?
I forget now. It's
Oh,
okay.
Neville
It's okay.
Mariner, right?
Oh,
Neville
okay. Yes.
Mariner.
Right.
And
Yep.
his interpretations is everyone does Bach a little differently for the unaccompanied pieces, and you're right. The older gentleman, your the Stern and the and
Stern.
Heifetz did it so differently. But I think it's important to listen to that as well and to see what the evolution is and how we got to what we're doing now and how they got to what they were doing then. And we can, it's nice to hear it all, and then you can kind of pick and choose what you want to do, what they brought out, what the Baroque specialists bring out, and see what you like. And kind of sometimes you come in the middle, and
Mhm.
it's not just a pure Baroque sound, and it's not a heavy duty romantic, but it's somewhere that
Yeah.
sits well with you. So
Sure.
anyway.
Well, and I love all of that, and I love that Jean Lemon was an inspiration for you, because one of the things about someone like a Jean Lemon, who is so steeped in Baroque tradition and understands the sound so well and the style so well, is that you start to get this sort of this dichotomy that I think exists in Bach in a way that I don't know of any other composer that it does. First of all, when you listen to Bach, it can sometimes sound like a perpetual motion machine and things just keep going and going and going. But inside of it, there are all these little micro phrases that are occurring. And I think the trick with Bach is to create all those micro phrases, but keep the sense of the perpetual motion machine going. Does that resonate with
Yeah.
either of you, Benedict? Does that make sense to you? There's this back and forth between these two aspects of this music.
Yeah, and the hardest thing is probably to make the connection between the two. You don't want it to sound too fragmented by bringing out two of the little phrases, too much of that. You want it still to flow and to breathe, but you have to, because if not, it, yeah, like you said, it starts sounding like a moto perpetuo.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. What about you, Lillian? What is the biggest challenge of playing Bach?
It's exactly what Benedict just said. It's exactly word for word. It's knowing how to bring the phrases out without making it, um, without taking away from the motion, so that you're not disrupting the phrasing too much, and you're not bringing it out overly, but you're showing us. But it makes sense. It's musical. It's not like a machine gun. It's not
Mhm.
just 16th notes covering the whole page, but they
Right,
make sense. They're melodic. And
right.
when you have the chords that we have to play, you're making sure that the chords lead somewhere, and they're not crunchy, and they're not, apart from the music, but they add to the music, and they show us what the harmony is going to be instead of detracting from it, because technically it's difficult.
Right. Well, I, for one, am going to be first in line to get my ticket to hear the two of you play this concerto. I think it's going to be spectacular. Both of you are playing the Bach double, the concerto for two violins by Johann Sebastian Bach with the Windsor Symphony Orchestra. Thank you both for sitting down and taking this time with me, and I look forward to hearing you play.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
I
Thank
look
you.
forward to it too.
Me too.
Thanks. Great.